YouTube? Joe Boy here. So today I want to talk about Kaido, his origin, his powers, why he is immortal. All of these things I want to cover in this one video. And so guys, this is probably going to come off as something that you have seen before, but I promise you by the end of this video, with all the evidence presented and with you thinking a particular thing that I'm going to argue for, I'm going to flip it on your head at the very end in a very Oda-like fashion. When I first heard this idea, it clicked for me in a way that makes it very, very possible. And so credit for this video goes to @PincerPower on Twitter, who informed me of the theory, and when I looked into the old post about Kaido essentially being a dragon and some comments on it, I found the original thoughts, but I don't think anyone's actually ever discussed it in a theory post. And so because of that, it's not popular, but I think it should be. But let's start off with all of the speculations that you've probably heard before. We're gonna justify them again before we get to the good stuff. And so we'll start off here. I believe that there is a dragon in Wano. Whether that be an actual dragon, whether that be Kaido, who has a mythical zone dragon fruit, or the Shogun, there is some dragon presence in Wano. The first bit of evidence which suggests this comes from Amanomoon, who shows a great amount of hatred against dragons, even going so far as to say that he has a vendetta against their very existence. Kinemon's reaction with the artificial dragons in Punk Hazard alone does not explain this hatred. The next hint comes from Momonosuke, who, as you know, consumed the artificial devil fruit that Vegapunk created, which seems to have turned him into a dragon. And when he looks into a mirror and sees his own reflection, here I'm showing you his reaction to that, which clearly shows that Momonosuke views dragons in a very similar light to Kinemon. Now you could argue that he's perhaps shocked by his strange appearance, but I think that the coincidence here with Kinemon's line is too much to ignore. But going back to Kinemon for a second, Kinemon also shows a great deal of fear when seeing Momonosuke's new form. And we also have this scene from Momonosuke, where Luffy essentially talks about Momonosuke and how he flew, or rather carried himself via clouds that he seemed to have created. Robin mentions that he doesn't seem to have wings, and Momonosuke says he doesn't remember anything like that. And even on the off chance that he did fly, he says by no means shall he ever again fly through the skies. And while he says this, he seems to have recalled a hand reaching out towards him. So firstly, this implies that Momonosuke had already flown, and he cannot recall the incident when he flew with Luffy, so this must be a different incident. And so assuming that Momonosuke could not fly before he gained the abilities of the artificial devil fruit, then we can assume that this hand or whatever actually took him flying. A lot of people argue that this hand belonged to Doflamingo, but I don't think that that sequence of events makes sense. Dressrosa is over, Doflamingo's out of the story, and this line still hasn't been explained. This hand would make far more sense to belong to Kaido. And some might argue that Doflamingo at least is confirmed to have the ability to fly, but I would say that Kaido is highly suggested to have the same ability. We can see in chapter 793 that Kaido's subordinates are yelling to him from a particular island, in which we can see Kaido, and the angle of this is very hard to decipher, but it seems as though Kaido might be flying. He's certainly depicted in a way which would make it possible. And we should also keep in mind that at this point in the story, Kaido is within earshot of his subordinates on this island. But then later on we see a couple chapters, somehow Kaido ended up on a sky island. So how does he get from this island to a sky island? I think the simplest answer here is that he flew. And I think it's also worth mentioning that Oda drew this panel in a particular way, which sort of would obscure Kaido's wings if he had them in this panel. But we do see off into the corner, there's a little blackness, which could be in relation to Kaido himself, and it's far enough away for it to be wingspan. So if you put these two things together, Kaido took Momonosuke, grabbed him, which is the giant hand that Momonosuke sees, and took him on a flight, which is why Momonosuke will not fly again. And if Kaido was indeed a dragon in the first place, it would explain Momonosuke and Kinemon's reactions to dragons in general, and Kinemon's grudge of dragons. And when you consider the idea that Kaido has potentially eaten a dragon devil fruit, and then you look at his appearance, there's definitely things which may lead you to believe that Oda is definitely hinting at this. From the scale-like, dragon scale-like tattoos on his shoulder, and his Fu Manchu also gives off the general appearance of the whiskers of a Chinese dragon. And even looking at Kaido's Jolly Roger, here I've colored in the portion that I want to talk about in red, but this could be construed as a hint towards Kaido's ability to fly. Essentially, this would be wings. If this isn't what this is, then I have no idea. And also, we cannot forget that Kaido seems to have some obsession with Zone Devil Fruit users. He wants a crew entirely comprised by them, whether they be actual Devil Fruits or artificial smile Devil Fruits. So I think this by itself substantiates very strongly the idea that Kaido might have some kind of relationship to a dragon. And this is not even mentioning Monsters, which was the one-shot Oda created before he created One Piece, and which essentially he tied into the story of One Piece. So that story took place in Wano, where the main character of the story, Ryuma, essentially fought a dragon in Wano. So again, I feel extremely confident that we will encounter a dragon in Wano. My personal preference would be Kaido, but that doesn't exclude the possibility that the Shogun may be a dragon, and or there just may be actual dragons. But let's move on to the next part of this theory. Rogers Base made a very popular speculation about Kaido several years ago, essentially stating that Kaido might have the Oni Devil Fruit. And guys, I'll admit that I was not a huge fan of this theory before learning what I just learned. But now I feel so much more intrigued by the possibility, and so why do people speculate that Kaido might have the Oni Devil Fruit? And that is, put simply, because he looks like an Oni. There's really no need to beat around the bush here. He has horns. His clothing style is consistent with an Oni. He carries around a club. He's giant and brawny. Straight up, his design is influenced by Oni. And so in Rogers' original speculation, he also compares it to the story of Momotaro. And so the tale of Momotaro goes as such. And first of all, it's important to note that Momotaro literally means peach boy. But basically, Momotaro came to Earth inside of a giant peach where he was discovered by an elderly couple. They actually tried to eat the peach and found the boy inside. Which, as a side note, if you follow my speculations on Momonosuke, my crazy speculation suggesting that perhaps Momonosuke is not actually a person, but rather a dragon before he was a person, and perhaps hatched out of the egg on Goldie Roger's ship, this would also be a very cool parallel. But that's not really the point of this speculation. So as time goes on, Momotaro decides to fight a band of Oni from a particular island. And on his journey to this island, he meets a dog, a monkey, and a pheasant, who agreed to help him on his quest. And together with the help of his friends, they managed to defeat the Oni in his castle. And Roger speculates that the Oni represents Kaido, and Peach Boy represents Momonosuke, which, if you don't know, Momonosuke, and in this case his counterpart Momotaro, share the first name Momo, which means peach. And as for Momonosuke's three friends, you have a monkey in Monkey D. Luffy, a dog in Inu Arashi, and a pheasant which could possibly represent Marco the Phoenix, all teaming up to defeat the Oni Kaido. Now, I wasn't really a huge fan of this speculation, despite all of the things that I've said here seeming clearly to be true, mainly because of the previous hints that Kaido can fly. And he has some relation to dragons. And I felt it awkward for Oda to have revealed his devil fruit nonchalantly, like he was a small man who ate the mythical zone Oni no Mi and just became a huge monster, and that's what we see first. I felt it more likely that Kaido was related to the continent pullers race, like Oars and Oars Jr., who also have the appearance of Oni. He is some kind of half Oni of that particular race, or something along those lines. And then Oda was saving his Devil Fruit reveal for later. But we'll come back to this in just one second. The next thing that I want to talk about is Kaido's immortality, and it's essentially stated in the manga that Kaido cannot be killed, and a lot of people just assume then that Kaido is immortal. But I'm not certain if that's the case, and I certainly don't think that it's clear cut. I think that there's a difference between being immortal and essentially being indestructible. And so what do I mean by this? Well, let's look at Oda's examples that he gave us for how Kaido improbably survived being killed. Every time Kaido was to be hung, the rope snapped. And even as he was put under the guillotine, the blade mysteriously breaks to pieces. Spears break when he is stabbed. And of course we can't forget the incident in which he jumped off of a sky island, fell 1,000 meters, and was seemingly unaffected. What's interesting about all of these examples is they don't necessarily imply that Kaido cannot be killed. More or less they imply that Kaido cannot receive damage, that he is so hard that spears and guillotines break on contact. He is so heavy that no rope can keep him up, that even falling 1,000 meters, he literally breaks the ground. And so when I think about a character who is immortal, I think more along the lines of a character like Hidan from Naruto, or Greed from the Seven Deadly Sins, who receive grievous injuries but just literally cannot die. Kaido is not like this. He seemingly cannot receive injuries, thus making him less immortal and more indestructible. And the point of me bringing all this up, besides just in general knowledge, is that this is also very consistent with the lore of the dragons. If you know of like the dragon Smaug from Lord of the Rings, it literally cannot take any damage. The only way to beat it was essentially to remove one of its scales and then attack its weak point. And so we're 12 minutes in here, and it's finally time to get to the point. What am I actually speculating here? Is Joy Boy speculating that Kaido has the dragon, Mythical Zone Dragon Devil Fruit? Is Joy Boy speculating that Kaido has the Oni no Mi? No guys, I'm speculating that Kaido is in fact a dragon. A dragon who ate the Mythical Zone human fruit model Oni. As soon as this thought pops into your mind, if you are anything like myself, you're like, wow, this could actually be a thing. And the first thing that I want to say about this is that, you know, even when something may seem predictable and you may have enough evidence to feel confident about something, like how I feel about Kaido and his relation potentially to dragons, Oda usually throws in a little twist in there that seemingly could not be predicted. And this particular speculation here feels like something Oda would actually do. The reveal of Kaido's Devil Fruit would pale in comparison to the reveal that Kaido himself was actually originally a dragon. The world's strongest creature, on land, sea, and air, who for some reason has an interest in animals. Wouldn't it make sense for him to originally have been an animal? But before we move on guys, I should have explained this earlier, and I just feel like I have to put this in this video because I know that I'm going to get hundreds of comments about this. But there's a lot of people out there that believe that Kaido is suicidal, and it's very clearly implied that he is. And so a lot of people say, well, if Kaido had a devil fruit, right, then he would just jump into the ocean, that would kill him. So there's no way that Kaido has a devil fruit. And I just want to say this, which is that if Kaido cannot breathe underwater, regardless of whether or not he has a devil fruit, jumping into the water would kill him. But even if Kaido could breathe underwater, it wouldn't change the fact that all living things need food to survive. So if Kaido truly wanted death, he would just stop eating. Unless he was actually truly immortal and couldn't die, in which case it wouldn't matter what he tried to do, he just wouldn't die. It wouldn't matter if he had a devil fruit or not. So I really think that Kaido isn't traditionally suicidal. I don't think he's looking to die by any cause. I think, based on the examples that we've seen so far, Kaido wants to see if he can die by actual physical damage, which is why he jumped off of a sky island 1,000 feet to see if it would break him, basically turned himself in for capture, most probably, to see if he could actually be executed. I think that Kaido has fun testing his physical defense. So death by starvation and death by drowning would not satisfy him. But anyway, going back to the speculation we had earlier, there's another really popular idea that Kaido was essentially an experiment, creation of the world government. And this speculation also works incredibly well with the theory that Kaido was originally a dragon, and in this case, a dragon created by the world government. Have we ever seen the world government trying to artificially create dragons? Well, yes we have. Now this would kind of suppose that Kaido is a much superior version of dragons than we actually got to see previously. Like, he was the epitome of what the world government could create. But still, I view it as possible. But one thing that's clear about the dragons in Punk Hazard is they don't seem very controllable. They seem kind of out of hand and not very intelligent. So if the world government managed to create the ultimate dragon in terms of attack and defense, in order to control it, they may have decided to feed it a human fruit, specifically the human fruit Maro-Oni, in order to give it intelligence so that it could better act as their weapon, only to have it turn on them as Kaido, giving a conscience, rebelled against them and escaped. And this speculation as well could possibly explain Kaido's depression, because we see that he's sort of always testing the limits of his indestructibility as though he kind of wants to die. And we see him as well sort of drowning himself in alcohol. This would make sense from the standpoint that he was a creation of the world government who has no family, as well as no kind to call his own. And this would also be a remarkable parallel to what we have been given about Momonosuke so far, who is a young boy who ate a mythical zone dragon fruit, whereas Kaido was a mythical creature dragon who ate a human fruit. And to also parallel monsters, the dragon has returned to Wano. But anyway guys, I'm not saying that I straight up believe this theory, right? Oftentimes I drift towards more simple ideas, and the simple idea here, if you're going to believe that Kaido has some kind of connection to a dragon, is that he's just some kind of giant Oni-like creature who ate the dragon fruit. I just think that this was too interesting and too mind-blowing to not share, right? And at the very least should open your mind to new possibilities, new thoughts, which I think is always healthy. But anyway guys, let me know what you think. Let me know if you agree or disagree about anything that I said. Just let me know. Like the video if you like the video, dislike the video if you dislike the video, subscribe if you want to be notified for my future content, and as always guys, have a wonderful day.